Jackson faces the mirror, meticulously adjusting his tie. His breath is a mix of nervousness and anticipation as he prepares for the meeting that could change his life. Emily, his girlfriend, had talked a lot about her parents, and now, finally, he would have the chance to meet her family. The anxiety hangs in the air like a subtle perfume, for despite all the romantic stories Emily had shared, Jackson knows that racial differences can bring unexpected tensions. He mentally reviews the advice given to him by close friends. Be yourself. Show respect. Make eye contact. But more than that, he remembers how Emily looks at him with that gleam of pride. It's not just a dinner, he thinks. It's a step towards a future together. As he grabs the car keys, his reflection in the mirror now shows a man ready to face whatever comes, armed with nothing but his sincerity and the hope of being accepted not just as he is, but as part of Emily's family. Jackson's car winds through the streets until it finally arrives at the destination. A beautiful house with a meticulously kept garden that reflects the precision and order Emily had always mentioned about her parents. As he turns off the engine, Jackson feels the weight of the moment, a palpable mix of expectation and slight apprehension as he approaches the gate. Emily, by his side, squeezes his hand, offering a reassuring smile that says, "Everything will be fine." As they cross the threshold of the door, they are welcomed by the warmth of a well-lit home and the sound of voices coming from the living room. Emily announces their arrival with a voice full of enthusiasm. "Mom, Dad, we're here!" The reception is warm but laden with a formality that Jackson immediately perceives. His hand still holds Emily's, seeking comfort in the familiarity of her touch. Hank and Martha, Emily's parents, appear in the hallway with smiles plastered on their faces. Martha hugs Emily and casts a curious glance towards Jackson. Hank, a tall man with a firm posture and an evaluative look, extends his hand for a firm handshake. "Jackson, it's a pleasure to finally meet you," he says, with a tone that seems to measure every word. Hank's gaze is inquisitive, as if trying to read more than what the young man in front of him allows to show. Dinner is about to be served, and as they head to the dining room, Jackson notices the various family photos adorning the walls, each telling the story of a life Emily had shared with him during long nights of conversation. He tries to see himself in those frames, part of that story, as he follows Emily into an environment that is both welcoming and intimidating. As they sit at the table, with the silverware elegantly arranged and the cutlery shining under the chandelier light, Jackson struggles to keep the conversation light, mentioning his recent project at work. He seeks to find common ground, a bridge between his world and theirs, while Hank's occasionally cautious glances fall upon him. It's a social chess game, where each word can either pave a way or raise a barrier. The conversation flowed somewhat naturally at the table when a simple comment from Hank brought an uncomfortable pause. "Jackson, I assumed you would be our Uber driver when you arrived. Did you two meet there?" The question, made with a forced laugh, hung in the air with an uncomfortable weight. Jackson and Emily exchanged a quick glance. She, surprised and a bit disappointed. He, keeping calm, chooses to respond politely. "No, Hank. We met at university," Jackson explains, his calm voice contrasting with the momentary tension. The smile he offers is courteous, but his eyes reflect the surprise of being mistaken for a service provider based on a misguided first impression. Martha, sensing the discomfort, quickly rushes to change the subject, praising Emily for how she has always been excellent at gathering the right people around her. Emily, grateful for the diversion, agrees, adding how Jackson has been a wonderful partner and an example of professionalism in his field. Hank, a bit embarrassed, tries to recover from the slip. Of course, I'm sorry about that. You must be doing amazing things then, he says, trying to redirect the conversation to safer territory. Jackson, still with a diplomatic smile, seizes the opportunity to discuss more about his work, mentioning his recent promotion to a leadership role that he approaches with passion. As the meal continues, Emily makes a conscious effort to keep the conversation light, although the shadow of Hank's initial comment still lingers over the table. Jackson, for his part, demonstrates impressive maturity, not allowing the initial misunderstanding to define the tone for the rest of the evening. He speaks enthusiastically about his projects, striving to show his true self, someone who, like Emily, believes in the power of inclusion and mutual respect. As dinner unfolds, the tensions seem to ease, but Jackson knows this is just the first of many obstacles he will need to overcome if he truly wants to be part of this family. With every word, he carefully weaves an image of himself that he hopes will be strong enough to transcend any initial prejudice. After dinner, Hank suggests a tour of the house, perhaps as a way to mend the previous discomfort. Jackson agrees, curious about the residence that Emily has described so fondly in their conversations. The house, a mix of modernity and relics from the past, reflects the many generations that have passed through. In Hank's office, the walls are adorned with a series of historical artifacts. These are some items from my personal collection, Hank begins, pointing to various pieces dating back to the Civil War era. Among them, some artifacts belonging to slaves catch Jackson's attention, who observes them with a mix of interest and discomfort. Hank, noticing Jackson's gaze, decides to comment, "These are rarities I've found over the years. They are pieces from a different time, you know?" His tone attempts to mask a provocation, but the choice of objects to display raises questions about Hank's true intentions. Jackson, maintaining his composure, responds politely, "They are indeed interesting historical pieces, Hank. It's important to remember where we come from and to ensure the future is different." His response is measured, conveying respect for the past without endorsing the underlying implications. As they continue the tour, Emily observes the interaction between the two men, sensing the subtle tension that develops. She knows her father well and his complexities, and a part of her worries about the impressions Jackson might be forming. Upon leaving the office, Hank seems a bit more contemplative, perhaps reflecting on Jackson's words. The tour, intended as a bridge, becomes a minefield of communication, where each object and comment can carry a weight greater than intended. Jackson, for his part, continues to navigate the evening with the dignity and grace that Emily has always admired in him. Returning to the dining room for dessert brings a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The dimmed lights and soft music in the background attempt to ease the mood, but the tension that began to form in Hank's office still resonates in the corners of the room. Jackson, maintaining his cordial demeanor, strives to focus on the conversation, while Emily, attentive, follows every exchange of glances between him and her father. Hank, perhaps trying to redeem himself, or simply unable to let the subject rest, continues to throw subtle comments that border on provocation. He speaks of tradition and legacy, choosing words that seem to carry more than a simple meaning, especially given the artifacts seen in the office. Jackson, realizing Hank's wordplay, opts to respond with thoughtful and polite answers. Yes, Hank, traditions are important, but it's also vital that they evolve to reflect the best of our modern values, he says, serving himself another spoonful of pudding. His response is calculated, intended to show respect for the host while standing firm in his own principles. Emily occasionally intervenes, trying to soften the conversation with interludes about future plans and shared projects with Jackson. She is the natural mediator, easing the tension with smiles and light comments that remind everyone of the reason for the gathering. Martha, Emily's mother, seems increasingly uncomfortable with the dynamics between her husband and the guest. She tries to steer the focus toward more neutral topics, such as recent travels and interesting books. Her attempt to change the course of the conversation is welcome, but the shadow of previous provocations lingers, leaving a subtle mark on the evening. As dinner approaches its end, Jackson continues to skillfully handle Hank's comments, showing a resilience and patience that only reinforces Emily's admiration for him. The tension, though still present, begins to give way to a tacit understanding that Jackson is not someone easily shaken, and that his intentions with Emily are genuine and profound. As the night went on, an unexpected moment was about to completely change the dynamic of the conversation. While Hank continued to talk about the importance of roots and heritage, Jackson smiled discreetly, preparing for a revelation he knew would surprise everyone at the table. With all eyes on him, Jackson began to speak about his recent promotion, something he hadn't mentioned earlier. Actually, Hank, I was recently appointed CEO of company XYZ, where I believe you work. Hank's expression changed instantly. His previously confident posture now seemed uncertain as he processed the information. The silence that followed was palpable. Emily looked at Jackson with a mix of pride and surprise, while Martha covered her mouth, visibly shocked by the coincidence. Jackson, maintaining his calm and professional tone, continued, I am looking forward to taking the company to new heights and ensuring that we value all our employees, regardless of their backgrounds. Hank, now clearly uncomfortable, was trying to gather his thoughts. The irony of the situation was not lost on him, as he had spent the evening trying to undermine his future boss. Jackson, that's surprising. Congratulations, he finally managed to say, his voice laden with newfound caution. The conversation, which had been revolving around traditions and legacies, now took a new turn. Jackson briefly discussed his vision for the company, emphasizing the importance of diversity and inclusion, topics he personally valued greatly. His speech was not just a defense of his values, but also a subtle reminder that perceptions and preconceptions can be challenging and changed. The dinner ended with a newfound respect from Hank, who promised Jackson his full cooperation at work. The previous tension seemed to dissipate, replaced by an understanding that sometimes a person's true capabilities and character can surprise even the most skeptical. Jackson's revelation. As the new CEO of the company where Hank worked, brought a palpable shift in Hank's behavior. The authority and confidence with which he had been conducting the conversation gave way to a more humble and cautious tone. As everyone stood up from the table, Hank requested a moment alone with Jackson, a request that carried a weight of urgency and regret. In the few steps to the house's library, Hank seemed to be gathering his thoughts, a mix of anxiety and determination in his gaze. "Jackson, I honestly didn't know about your promotion," Hank began, his voice low and serious. "And looking back on this evening, I realize that my words and actions may have been offensive. I was wrong." Jackson listened attentively, his expression calm but inscrutable. Hank continued, the words coming out with difficulty. "I sincerely ask that you don't judge me solely based on tonight. I am willing to learn and change. I ask for a chance to show that I can do better at work." Hank's sincerity was evident, and for a moment, the space between them was filled with a tension of possibilities. Jackson, after a brief silence, nodded slowly. "I appreciate your honesty, Hank. I believe in second chances and personal growth. I will be watching closely, hoping to see the changes you mentioned." Hank expressed his relief and gratitude with a nod. "Thank you, Jackson. I won't let you down." They returned to the living room where Emily and Martha were conversing. The atmosphere had changed. There was a new respect in the air, an understanding that first impressions do not always define the course of a relationship. As the night drew to a close and the guests prepared to leave, Hank's promises of change not only eased the mood, but also opened a new chapter of potential redemption and mutual respect. After the heartfelt conversation in the library, Jackson found himself reflecting on the position he was in. As he watched Hank return to the living room, he pondered the complexities of leadership and the impact that his decisions could have, not only on an individual's career, but also on their personal lives. Determined to approach the situation with fairness and integrity, Jackson knew he would not make hasty decisions regarding Hank. "I will monitor your conduct closely," he had said, a promise he intended to keep. It was important to him that the work environment at the company reflected the values of respect and equality that he cherished so much. On the way home, while Emily was driving, Jackson shared his reflections with her. "I want the company to be a place where everyone feels valued and respected, regardless of their backgrounds or positions," he explained, seeking Emily's support, whose eyes showed pride and understanding. Emily nodded, holding Jackson's hand. "I know you will do what is right. My father has a lot to learn, but I believe he really wants to change," she replied, hopeful. The conversation flowed naturally between them, addressing not only Jackson's professional future, but also his personal one, as they planned how to face the challenges ahead together. In the following days, Jackson began the process of closely monitoring Hank's performance at the company. He organized regular meetings and established clear criteria for performance and ethics. It was a delicate balance between giving Hank the opportunity to prove his change and ensuring that the work environment was safe and welcoming for everyone. Every step Jackson took reflected his commitment not only to the company, but to the people who were part of it. He was determined to lead by example, showing that power and position should be used to unite and uplift, never to divide or diminish. It was a new chapter for both Jackson and Hank, filled with learning and opportunities for growth. In the days following Jackson's visit, Emily and her mother, Martha, found a moment to reflect on the events that had occurred. Sitting in the garden under the warm sun of an autumn afternoon, they talked about the need for change, not only in Hank, but perhaps in their own perceptions and expectations as well. "I never imagined that dinner would take that turn," Martha remarked, stirring her tea. "But maybe it was necessary. Your father needs to understand that the world is changing, and he needs to change too." Emily listened attentively, knowing that those words came from a place of love and concern. Emily shared how proud she was of Jackson for handling the situation with such maturity and diplomacy. Jackson could have reacted in many ways, but he chose to be understanding and fair. "That only makes me respect him even more," she said, her eyes reflecting admiration and love. Martha nodded, a gentle smile spreading across her face. "That speaks volumes about his character, Emily, and about the kind of person you chose to have by your side." She paused, thoughtful. "I think we all learned something important about respect and understanding that night." The conversation then shifted to the future, discussing how they could support Hank in his journey of self-improvement. "Maybe we can help him attend some talks or workshops on diversity and inclusion," Emily suggested, already thinking of practical ways to contribute to her father's evolution. As the afternoon gave way to twilight, mother and daughter felt closer, united not only by family ties, but by a shared commitment to fostering a more welcoming and respectful environment, both at home and beyond. It was a new chapter for the family, marked by the understanding that personal growth is ongoing and essential for everyone. As the story of Jackson and Emily unfolded, it became a powerful example of the strength of understanding and mutual respect. The shared experience that night during dinner and the conversations that followed not only transformed personal relationships, but also became a small seed of change in the larger community. On a quiet Sunday, as they walked together through the city park, Jackson and Emily discussed how they could use their experiences to encourage others to reflect on issues of racism and prejudice. "Maybe we can start something, a discussion group, or a workshop in the community," Emily suggested, excited about the idea of making a difference. Jackson agreed, his mind already formulating plans on how they could implement these ideas. It's important for people to understand that respect and understanding are fundamental to any healthy society. And our experience can help illustrate that, he reflected, looking to the future with hope. With the support of Martha and other community members, they organized the first meeting, which was well received. The stories shared by Jackson about overcoming challenges and respect crossed personal boundaries, touching the hearts and minds of many who were present. As more people joined the meetings, the message of Jackson and Emily spread, inspiring others to examine their own lives and communities. The impact of these gatherings began to be felt, with more conversations about inclusion and respect becoming common, even in places where silence had previously prevailed. In the end, the story of Jackson and Emily was not just about them, but about the potential of each person to positively influence the world around them. Through their example, they showed that even in the most difficult situations, it is possible to find hope and the possibility of change. With each step and each conversation, they contributed to a future where mutual respect was not only possible, but the expected norm. As we conclude the exciting journey of Jackson and Emily, it is impossible not to reflect on the lessons each of us can take from this story. We saw how misunderstandings and prejudices can be overcome through respect, understanding, and the willingness to change. But now, I ask you, how can you apply these lessons in your own life? Are you ready to be the change you wish to see in the world? It is essential for us to question ourselves and always seek to improve, not only for ourselves, but for future generations as well. What actions can you take today to make your environment more inclusive and respectful? How can you help dispel prejudices in your community? If this story touched your heart and provoked reflections, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep following along. We have many other videos that can inspire and motivate you to make a difference. And don't forget to watch the recommended videos on the screen right now to continue your journey of learning and inspiration. Together, we can build a better world, one video at a time. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.